I'm just going to do a really quick breakdown of this North Carolina versus Charleston game. It was North Carolina's first game of the 2020-2021 basketball season. And like the score was 79-60 and it wasn't really a blowout. And you look at the statistics for North Carolina and you can see why. So from three at least, they shot really poorly. They only shot 22% from three. However, when you look at the other counting stats, they definitely dominated. They had 17 offensive rebounds, 47 total rebounds, and you can kind of see the margins between them and Charleston beneath them. They had they had 8 turnovers to Charleston's 14. They had 8 blocks, 10 assists, 9 steals. They had 14 more free throws. So they kind of just dominated in all the other basic counting stats. And when you look at the shot charts, you can kind of see the poor shooting performance from three with all these red marks. So like 0 of 2, 1 of 4, 0 of 3, 1 of 6, 2 of 8, 1 of 2, 1 of 4, 0 of 2, 0 of 1. Like they didn't shoot well at all except for underneath the rim where they scored most of their points. If we see that, they scored 43% of their points just from this particular area. So that was definitely where they dominated this game. And you kind of look at why, and it's because they kind of rotated around three bigs. So if you watch the game, they kind of, in the 4 and 5 position, just went through 3 different players, which was number 5 Baycott, number 11 Sharp, and then number 15 Brooks. Those were the kind of their 3, 4, and 5s. And it's interesting comparing the 3 because obviously that's natural and you just want to see who performed the best out of those 3 players. And I'm going to eliminate Brooks straight away. He still played well, like it was 30 minutes, 30% shooting, so that's not great. But in terms of his other stats, he was still 10 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 block, and 7 points. However, he did have 4 turnovers and 2 personal fouls. So you kind of go and immediately look at Baycott and Sharp, and they shot a lot better. Sharp was 50%, whereas Baycott was 80%. However, Sharp did have a higher volume. Neither one of them even attempted a shot from 3 as you would when you're that big. They had free throws where Sharp went 83% and Baycott went 75%, but again, Sharp had a higher volume. And then when you get to the rebounds, it gets kind of crazy where Baycott had 8 total rebounds, but 3 of them were offensive rebounds, 5 were defensive rebounds, whereas Sharp had 10 rebounds and 5 offensive rebounds, so that's quite a lot. He also had 4 personal fouls, whereas Baycott had 0. Neither one of them had a turnover, which is pretty crazy, pretty good. Sharp had 2 assists, whereas Baycott had 0. He had 2 blocks, whereas Baycott had 3. He had 1 steal, whereas Baycott had 0. And Sharp had 13 points, where Baycott had 11. So that's a pretty strong statistical line when you look at Sharp. You know, you got 13, 10, and 2, but then you've also got 2 blocks and a steal. However, when we look at the advanced stats, it kind of gets more clear who of these 2 players performed better. So if we immediately go to the plus minus, Sharp had a plus 16 plus minus, whereas Baycott had a negative 2. And then that stat beside it where Sharp is plus 11 and Baycott is negative 1, that's rebounding plus minus. So that's how many rebounds or how many more rebounds did your team get when you were on the floor compared to when you weren't on the floor. And when Sharp was on the floor, his team got 11 more rebounds than Charleston, which obviously indicates that he was blocking out better or he was just getting a lot more of those rebounds. Whereas Baycott, when he was on the floor, North Carolina had a negative 1 rebound plus minus compared to when he wasn't. So that's a 12-point difference compared to between these 2 players. And then when you look at all the other kind of advanced stats, like Sharp has 16.9 rebounds per 40, whereas Baycott has 13.1, and all that other stuff, whereas, Sharp has a higher usage percentage, and that's kind of what you want when he's performing that well. While we're in the advanced stats, we'll just look at the team advanced stats, and again, you can see why Carolina won this game. They had 19 second chance points compared to Charleston's 6. They had a 41.4 outcome percentage compared to 25.5 for Charleston. And this is a stat that basically is what percentage of your possessions ended in an opposition foul or uncontested shot. And then when we get to the defense, Carolina's had 68.1% of their shots contested, whereas 82.3% of Charleston's shots were contested. And that kind of reflects the film that you see where Charleston was definitely getting doubled a lot by Carolina, especially when they would have an isolated ball handler. Carolina would send their number 3 or Black or a number 4 in terms of like Brooks or Baycott or Sharp and try and really like swamp the guy and make sure you get a turnover, which They did because they had 9 steals, 10 assists, and Charleston had 14 turnovers. So that's my really quick, just output analysis of this game. If you have any questions, my email is in the description below, and hopefully you learned something.